You're live. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good to be here. Hope I'm reaching who I'm supposed to reach. Welcome to our third class of Mindless Potential. It's part of the Discovering Buddhism course. So there are 5 people logged in. That's great. So I'm going to start with our normal breathing meditation, mindfulness meditation, to settle the mind, calm the mind. Also, this is mindless potential, so it's very good to do some mindfulness practice to see what's going on in the mind. So today we'll do our normal mindfulness of breath meditation, and we'll also breath is our sort of our main practice, but consciousness is another object that we can use as the object of meditation. So consciousness is basically thoughts, what's happening in the mind. So since we're talking about mind and mental factors in this class, I thought it'd be good to move to the consciousness object and just see what's happening in the mind. So we'll spend, say, 5 minutes on the breath and, say, 5 minutes looking at mental consciousness, what's happening in the mind. So we're going to just open up the mind and just allow thoughts to enter. We're not going to sort of attach and hold on to them, but we're just bringing our awareness of what's happening, just like looking at a movie screen, what's happening, images, memories, maybe something that's happened today, something that's worrying you. So we'll allow these thoughts to come, and then we'll just let them move on. Sometimes it can help to give a quick label to the thought. That's memory, that's that problem that I'm usually thinking about. So just a word or two, and then just let them go. So just giving a word or two to the thought or to the mental activity can actually help us become aware of what it is that's going on in the mind, what it is that's either making us anxious or happy, or might be thinking about dinner tonight or something we're going to do tomorrow. Whatever it is, we just give it a quick label and then let go. Okay, so we'll start off with the breath. Just get a comfortable position. The wine glass. Okay, so just coming into our body and mind now. Bring our awareness inwards. Time to check what's happening inside. We begin always with our motivation. A few moments just to appreciate the opportunity to do some practice, study the Dharma, take care of our minds. Also the motivation, Vajrayana motivation of our whole practice, our whole Dharma practice, not just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of all sentient beings, all beings. It gives us a much more powerful state of mind. And then we just start with the body, making sure we're comfortably sitting on the chair, the floor, evenly balanced. Just scanning the body, starting at the top for any holding on, any tension, muscle tension, particularly the shoulders. Making sure the back's reasonably straight. Just checking the muscles around the face and the eyes. Softening them. feeling the weight of our body on the chair, gentle pull of gravity into the earth. Have a sense of being held by the earth, trusting the earth to hold us. With each out breath, have a sense of letting go physically and breathing out all the distractions, busy thoughts, all the obstacles to our practice coming out with each out breath and letting go. Just becoming more aware now of the movement of the body with the breath, watching, not interfering, stepping aside and watching the natural movement of the body with the breath. Choosing the most comfortable place to focus on the breath, the nostrils, lower down at the abdomen, or the movement of the whole body with the breath. Finding that comfortable position to focus on the breath. Staying with the breath. Also remembering to be alert for any distractions. It's called introspection, watching, checking, monitoring. If we've wandered off, just notice that distraction. Be glad we noticed. Letting it go. Patiently coming back to the breath again and again. Stay with the breath. full flow of the in-breath and the full flow of the out-breath. And then either staying with the mindfulness of the breath or gently letting go of the breath. And now turning our attention to the thoughts, what's happening in the mind, mental consciousness. Allowing thoughts to enter the mind. Just watching, maybe a memory, conversation, image, feeling. When we identify what's happening in the mind, giving it a label. And then letting go of it. Sending it on its way, not holding on. Perhaps there are no thoughts coming. Just observe the stillness, quietness, experience of no thoughts. just relax. So, our third class on mind is potential. So I hope you've got the regular students. I sent out the notes for today, and there's 3 questions there. Let's just start the ball rolling. And if there's new people who are watching and they want to join the group and get the notes, just give me your email where it says say something, I think. Yeah, say something. Sometime during the session tonight, you can just give me your email and name, and I'll be able to include you on the mailing list. Okay, so let's have a look at the questions. Fairly easy, I think. I'm making the first 2 true or false, so that you can actually write something. You can actually write an answer if you want. True or false. This is question: main minds are all sensual consciousnesses. Main minds. So remember, last week we looked at the difference between main minds and mental factors. This is the traditional division, Buddhist psychology of functions of the mind. So is it true that main minds are all sensual consciousnesses? Consciousnesses, that's a big word. So just have a think. If you want it, just put the answer in there. You can just put false or true. And also I'll probably recognise who you are from your email address, which comes up when you say something. And if you don't know, just guess. Got a 50% chance of being right. Okay. No one's put an answer in. Okay. All right. So main minds, the main minds include the 5 senses. Yeah, good. False, Maria. Thank you very much. It's false because we've got the 5 sense consciousness, and then there's the mental consciousness as the 6th main mind. So that's mental consciousness, of course, is not sensual. It's just what's happening in the non-material mind, non-sensual mind. So that's the first one. Next one, a person who's multitasking, doing many things at once, seems to be encouraged sometimes these days, is using multiple main minds all at once. Is this true or false? Multiple main minds. So it means that they're looking, they're seeing, they're touching, probably not tasting, they're hearing. So someone probably driving a car is a good example where you're doing many things like that all at once, or sensory things. Perhaps you're actually on the phone as well, which may be even another sensory distraction. And you might be thinking about something as well. So, which is the 6th mental consciousness, mental main mind. So is it possible to do all those things at once? True or false? Anyone want to have a go? So this is, Buddhist psychology says no, it's not possible to do these things at once. So each main mind operates at one time. So you can only actually see something at one moment and then hear something at another moment. Good. Yes, it's false. Thank you very much. Thanks, Barbara and Maria. So the multitasking, according to the Buddhist psychology, is actually just taking your mind, putting your mind on one aspect, the sight, and then taking it off that and putting it on another, the sound, for example, or the touch, or whatever it is that we're doing with our different senses. And sometimes I think if you're if you bring mindfulness into, say, listening to music, it might be possible to notice that you're either hearing or seeing. So it's said to be so quick that the mind's going from one to the other so quickly that we actually don't notice the jump. But so if accepting this is true, you can see how if we're only doing something intermittently, not doing it as mindfully or as well, if the mind's going from sight to sound and back to sight to sound, so if we're doing two things at once, or three things at once, or whatever, so less efficient, probably. Yeah. So that's the second one. Yeah, that's right. We switch from one mind to the other. So the last one is just looking at main minds and mental factors. Which of these types of consciousness judges an object and gives its qualities? Okay, so the answer is either the main mind is the one that judges and gives quality, or mental factors. So the main minds or mental factors. So the one, which of those two categories of mental activities judges, gives qualities, likes, doesn't like, attracted or repelled? Anyone remember that one? It's actually the mental factors that give an object colour, they say. Colour, that means likes, dislikes, and qualities. So this is good, we like this one, we don't like that. So this is all the job of mental factors. Main minds are these 6 minds that are actually neutral and just there ready to receive whatever it is, sensory input or thought, but they don't actually judge or give qualities to the object. So that just on that, I actually meant to put the point. I've got a point there that I was meant to put in last week's notes and I forgot. So I just actually thought I'd better put it in. I talked about it. So we're talking about sensory consciousness and how it works. That means hearing, seeing, touching, tasting, feeling, sensing. So you need these 3 factors according to the Buddhist theory of psychology. An object. I've given the example of a flower. So we're taking the example of sight, seeing something. We need something to look at. The example of a flower, that's called the apprehending condition. Then we need something to look at it with. So we need an eyeball. The Buddhist teachings say that not just the physical eye, but you actually need the ability to see, which is called eye consciousness, or the empowering condition. So it's not quite clear. I think it's physical, but so it's the ability to process the images that are coming onto the eye and seeing, giving that, making that into sight. And I gave the example last week of some people who actually have a psychological condition that make them go blind either for long periods or short periods, even though their eye is totally physically perfect. There's nothing wrong with them medically. So this is actually a medical condition, and it's usually, some of them, this medical people say there's no reason for it, there's no explanation. Others just say it's something to do with the mind. So that what the Buddhists would say is, well, they're lacking the subtle eye consciousness, the ability to actually see. They've got the organ, the eye organ, but not the ability to see. So that's the second thing. The third thing you need to see, to have eye consciousness, is a mind. And the previous moment of consciousness causes the current mind. Remember that? Each moment of mind is caused by previous moment of mind. So you need the previous mode of consciousness to cause this present moment of mind that can actually apprehend the flower or the object. Anyway, so that's from last week, so I won't dwell on that too much. Okay. So, yes, good to see people just saying a few words. Thanks, Ben. Hi. Good to see Barbara's here, Maria. Let's move on to just always feel free to put a question in as we go along. It doesn't matter if it's relating to what I'm saying, because I can always come back to it. This week we're looking at the 51 mental factors. We're not doing all the 51, far too many. So we just started at this. I think I just mentioned that there were 51 mental factors and what they are. So we're just going to do a selection of them. First, we're going to do actually the first 3 tonight if we've got time. And then next week we'll do the wholesome mental factors and the unwholesome. I don't think we'll get to this number 6. All the texts I'm reading haven't even mentioned them. So remember that these mental factors, just looking what Geshe Tashi Tsering says about them, I'm using his book as the main source. He says the mental factor is an aspect of mind that apprehends a particular quality of the object. So he says, gives the example of desire arising from seeing an object that is beautiful. And this colours the whole mind. So if you see a flower, that's the main mind, eye consciousness, then the mental factor likes it, gets attracted, and then the feeling of desire, like emotion of desire, would like to have more flowers, and maybe grasping at the idea of that flower. So this is how the one mental factor can cause other mental factors. The attraction or the classifying of that flower as beautiful can lead to the wish, the emotion of desire. And that can colour the whole mind, he says. So the whole mind could, it's a very strong desire, want to grasp at that object. Could be a person, could be something, money or something. So that's basically the way mental factors work. And of course, mental factors can be positive as well as negative. Mental factor of equanimity or sharing somebody's suffering, that could lead to compassion, wanting to relieve the suffering, and so on. So let's just have a look at the first category, the 6 groups. So we'd look at always present mental factors. So these are always operating, and they function together. And they may not be all equally strong, but when we go through them, you'll see that they're just sort of basically telling you how it's like a process of the mind apprehending something. But it's said that you need to have these factors to have a unit of mind. This is the way Geshe Tashi Tsering says that most of the scholars describe it. To have a unit of mind, that means a functioning mind, you need to have these 5 mental factors, always present mental factors. So the first one is contact. So this contact is just where the mind meets an object. And here's the obvious example of the flower again. There has to be a meeting of the mind with the flower. So that's the basis of any experience, any further experience. You don't have that contact, there's no possibility of it being pleasurable, unpleasant, or anything flowing from that. So the second one is discernment. Discernment is getting this raw data that something is there that identifies it as a flower. So the first one is just getting the data, the sensory input. You don't actually probably, at that stage, you haven't, mind hasn't classified as a flower. It's just got made contact. Second step, the raw data received by the mind on contact with the object notes its characteristics, can identify it. So if it's seen a flower before, it's that's the daffodil. That's that beautiful flower I've been trying to grow in my garden. So you can identify, and you can actually recall an early experience of seeing the flower if you've had one. If you haven't had an early experience the flower, it's the first time, then it'll be so that looks like a flower, but I haven't seen that one before. So of course it might be something you've never seen before and you can't even identify what it is. Could be a bit of often see a bit of IT technology, like some sort of computer part. I have no idea what it is, but it's just there. It's an object. So my mind hasn't actually been able to, hasn't seen it before. Can see what it is, but it hasn't see the form of it, but it can't give it a name. So discernment could be clear or unclear. We may not be a very observant person. We might be, you might have a bad memory, so you can see somebody there that I know that face, but I can't actually remember who it is. Am I mistaken? Have I seen that person before? So this is where discernment may not be clear. So that's the discernment, noting the characteristic of the object and committing it to memory if you haven't seen it before, or remembering the early experience of the flower if you've seen it before. Next one, feelings and sensations. So this is said to be like the driver of what drives us, ultimately what keeps us in the desire realm. This is the experiencing object as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, like, dislike, or neutral, thumbs up, thumbs down. So this mental factor is usually associated with sensory consciousness, and Geshe Toshiden gives the example of the sunset, seeing a beautiful sunset, but the first contact with the sunset, we'll just see the data. The second discernment will say, it's a sunset. And then this feeling will say, it's a beautiful sunset. I like it. Very beautiful. And then it could lead to memories of previous sunsets. It could create emotions and feelings. So this is the idea of enjoying. I'm enjoying the sunset. So these feelings of either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral will drive us to actually perhaps go into action, maybe stay longer to watch the sunset, or if it's a delicious food or cake, we want another bite. So this is remembering that the human realm where we are born, our human body is born into what they call the desire realm. The human realm is the desire realm, where the predominant, I don't know whether you call it a mental factor, it probably is, mental factor is desire, where we're very much driven by sensory, the wish for sensory pleasures. So that's where we are. These actions, when we have a pleasant experience, they could be skillful or unskillful. Okay? You could we could overindulge in the chocolate cake. It's a very sort of minor, unskillful thing, but it could become incredibly greedy if we love money and we want the material things that it buys and so on. So that's the negative one, and also the feelings can be compassionate. We can be moved by somebody's suffering and feel empathy. We may even feel that we want to do something about that person's suffering. The next step, apart from empathy, to actually take some action to relieve the person's suffering. So, so these, it's just a little bit more of that, which I don't think I've got in your notes, that can actually affect how we feel about how we react to these inputs. Is our there are four conditions. The first one is our natural condition. The natural condition is whether we like, or we have a sort of a history of liking this particular thing or not liking it, or being neutral. Okay, we might particularly like it. Mozart's symphonies. As soon as we hear it, okay, we remember that we like that. So we have that a condition that we were attracted to that sort of music. The second one is training. So this is basically how our environmental factors. And one example would be going to the army and being trained to be aggressive and kill the enemy. So this is a negative type of training. But Hitoshi Saring says that it's actually used more commonly in a positive sense, training our mind to subdue the wild thoughts, training ourselves to be more patient, training our mind to be more compassionate, and so on. So, so it can be either positive or negative, but mostly it's used in terms of positive. And then, so this is obviously for the feelings training. We can train ourselves in certain circumstances to react in a more patient way, and to not feel so angry. Mental disposition is basically talking about the desire realm, because we're born humans. We have this overwhelming wish to experience pleasure. But that's kind of the mental disposition of our karmic situation, desire realm, being in a human realm. And the last one is personality. Personality is whether we've got a genital nature, aggressive nature, so on. That will affect our feelings of how we react to these inputs when we encounter certain things. So that's the third one. The fourth one is intention. So this these follow one after the other. Once feeling is present, intention moves our mind into a certain direction. So if we really like the ice cream, the next thing is to have another serving. So you take some action to increase the pleasure. So this is a clearly defined thought to do something, and it's sometimes called volition or intention. And this is where karma comes into the picture. So it's forming the intention, said to be putting positive or negative seeds on the mind stream. This is before we act with words or actions. The intention is formed. The acts follow intention. So the mind comes first, then either the word or the action. It's very, I think I gave a quote to that effect last week. So, so these decisions, our intention to go this way and not that way, we're going to take that road, not this road, not random. And the reason we choose one thing or the other is very much determined by our karmic disposition. So the feeling is the cause, and the intention is the result. Okay, I don't like that situation. I won't go there again. I don't like that person, so I'll avoid that person. Certainly won't be trying that that food again because I didn't like it. So these intention is planting the seeds of future happiness or unhappiness. So we could actually, by having the intention to repeat what could be an addictive drug or something. I'll give the example of chocolate cake. So obviously too much will obviously harm. So I'll just read what Kishitasa says here. He says, whatever helps or harms our sense of self colours our feelings and intentions. Because remember, this sort of self, this is the unenlightened beings, ordinary beings like ourselves. Karma is working at a level too subtle for our comprehension. So he also gives a good example. It's if we're somehow conditioned to associate a certain colour with nice things, pleasure, colour blue. He gives an example of colour blue. If you see a range of things of different colours, the blue ones will attract us because of that previous association of enjoyment or pleasure with the colour blue. So that's where the feeling of the karmic sort of aspect comes into intention. Last one is attention, the ability to actually direct the mind to the object, to actually keep the mind on the object. So this is what we're doing in our mindfulness practice. We're directing our attention to a particular object and just resting it there for as long as we can, and then when we get distracted, bring it back again. Giving the mind that habit of resting on a particular object, mindfulness. So that's the last one, and we can actually enhance and develop that capacity for attention. So he says that so these all these different factors, these ever-present mental factors. He said it's easy to understand why there can be no mind without them. We can't have a mind without them. There must be an object for mind which is subjective to be present. For mind, we need an object. There must be contact between the mind and the object. This is reviewing what we've just been through. If there's no discernment, nothing about the object that the mind can apprehend. And if there's no feeling, there can be no actual experience of the object. So in this case, how can there be a mind that knows the object? So even this understanding reflects a very basic level of operations. So to move beyond that, we call intention, and finally, with the first one is intention, and then finally with attention, we need that to focus on the object long enough for the mental event to be meaningful. So all these things have to be present for a moment of mind, a unit of mind. So it's really quite extraordinary how Buddhist psychology has actually developed this incredibly detailed analysis of this first mental factor, always present mental factor. Obviously, extremely vast and powerful minds have meditated for great periods of time to actually ascertain what's happening in them. They can ascertain and see these things, these events happening, what's necessary for a unit of mind. Extraordinary ability and skill to actually see what's happening there. So that's the first group of mental factors always present. So, if anyone wants to ask a question, or have a quick drink of water, also have a drink of yourself, and feel free to ask anything. Just on the meditation tonight, we're going to do meditation on equanimity. So common humanity is what it's called by this particular Thupten Jinpa, who developed this meditation, normally conventionally called equanimity. So this is developing one of the positive mental factors of compassion, and equanimity is said to be the first step towards compassion, like cultivating, preparing the ground to plant the seeds, the crop. Just we'll have a quick look at the object ascertaining mental factors, and then the variable mental factors. So the object ascertaining mental factors, we're on page 3 of the notes. So Geshe Tashi Sering says the always present mental factors are like the engine, which is just the mechanics of the mind, and these object ascertaining mental factors are what shapes the mind experiences. So how closely ascertained the object is to reality depends on how deluded or enlightened the ascertaining mind is. So this is really how we actually see the world. First one is just the mechanics, and this one's what we do with that input, how we deal with it, whether we want to explore the object, reject it, and so on. So these factors I've just listed there: aspiration, appreciation, recollection, concentration, and intelligence. So some of these are not always present. So unlike the first group, always present. Some of them may not be present, and some of them might be more pronounced than others at any particular time. Aspiration. So he says this is different to intention. Intention is more a basic underlying wish. Aspiration is more specific, and he gives the positive aspiration of wanting to leave samsara, the wish to be liberated. He says this is an incredibly powerful mind. So this is to achieve a particular outcome, the wish to be liberated, or the wish to become enlightened. The wish to be liberated is the Hinayana wish, to be free of all suffering, and the Mahayana wish is the wish to be liberated from all suffering in order to be of benefit and liberate all other sentient beings. So that's aspiration. Second one, appreciation. It appreciates the object in recognition of its qualities, whether positive, negative, or neutral. This is picking out a particular object, say in a group of things that we like or dislike. Just out of a number of input, seeing a collection of objects and noting one in particular. And we want that. I want that particular thing I can see in the shop, the window display, that particular beautiful piece of clothing or whatever. The third one, recollection. He gives a good example of how an experience from the past can bring a recollection can actually associate back to sort of open up the mind to a whole lot of other experiences. He gives the example of smelling Tibetan incense in a gompa for the first time. So probably before we met Tibetan Buddhism, we'd never smelt Tibetan incense. But now, after some contact and experience of Tibetan incense, we can probably associate with a gompa, place of meditation, perhaps our own meditation cushion, and so on. So the ability to evoke, I suppose, yeah. So the recollection be particularly strong if we've developed desire for a particular thing or experience. We think about it, we want to repeat it. Concentration, the ability of the mind to remain on the object. So this is a bigger sort of capacity than attention. Attention, which is what we looked up in the always present mental factors. So this is to remain on the object. So we might have the wish to be free of samsara occasionally. We might see or experience great suffering in our own lives, and we've got to get out of this cyclic existence, the samsaric situation. But how strong it is will depend on how much we've ingrained or we've become familiar with that wish to be free from suffering, free of samsara. So it usually takes a long time to develop that wish, which is actually renunciation, to see the limits of our predicament and want to actually be free. So we might have the wish, that noble wish to be free of suffering, to be liberated, but then the wish of chocolate cake or pizza or ice cream comes into the mind more strongly. Mama Yoshi is very good at saying how this can happen. We have quite our good wishes can sometimes be overwhelmed by the more mundane, grasping, desirous wishes. Last one, intelligence, the ability of the mind to examine the object and determine its value. So it's not actually our IQ, but our ability to see perhaps what the value of the Dharma is a good example. So there's something here. We first met our teachers, or came across Tibetan teachings, read a book. That idea of saying this is really something of great value that I want. That's very positive sort of intelligence. And also there's the point that these factors are not necessarily virtuous. And Geshe Tashstone gives the example of stealing, having the wish to rob the bank, the aspiration, appreciating the value of the money, remember again how and so on, what it can buy, and having great concentration, being really mindfully robbing the bank, and being very clever at it. So all these mental factors are there, but for a negative purpose. And then compare that with wish to give, having aspire to be generous, to be charitable, and appreciating how helpful that is, just understanding how the recipient can benefit and so on. So using all those factors in a very positive way. So that's the collection of mental factors called object ascertaining. Object ascertaining. Basically, to me, it seems to be like a collection of evaluating something. something either for the good or not. It could be something that helps us or hinders us. Okay, so we'll just quickly look at the variable. The variable ones are quite interesting, I think, because these variable mental factors are neutral. They can be wholesome or unwholesome, or neutral. And so the four are regret, sleep, investigation, and analysis. So sleep's an interesting one. So it's said that the mind that we have just before we go to sleep can affect the quality of the sleep, whether it's virtuous or non-virtuous. Certainly affect whether we have a good sleep or not. If we're worried about something, we probably can have quite a disturbed sleep, whereas if we're in a very tranquil state of mind before we go to sleep, it can be good sleep. But just going beyond that, if we go to, Geshe gives the example of going to sleep with an altruistic mind, perhaps reading a prayer. So may I sleep well in order to be much more used to sentient beings tomorrow, in the future. Rest is for the benefit of others. Can be very virtuous, and that virtuous state of mind can be quite powerful when we're asleep. Whereas a more negative motivation can also have quite a negative, powerful effect when we're asleep. So the second one, regret. So he makes it very clear that regret is definitely not guilt, which he says is incredibly negative, always negative, always adverse, and quite harmful to our mind, where we actually are attacking ourselves for identifying the negative action we've done, saying, I'm a bad person, rather than seeing it as unskillful action that's not necessarily us. It's just something bad we've done, and regretting what we've done. So he says, regretting, this is in our purification practice, it's very important to have that mind of regret. One of the powerful factors that we need to effectively purify, regret the negative actions we've done, identify what are negative actions, and then we go and use the particular practices that will purify with the intention of not to repeat them again, relying on Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. So non-various regret is regretting something positive that we've done. So if we've donated some money or time, or whatever, something good that we've done to a good cause, and then we later regret, I shouldn't have given that much money. Now I'm short of cash for myself. So that's said to be a non-virtuous sort of regret, regretting a positive deed we've done. Of course, it can be purified like all negative actions. The other neutral variable mental factor is investigation, exploring an object, and the fourth one, analysis. They seem very similar, those ones. Analysis is a deeper type of exploration than investigation, looking into something. So we could be investigating somebody's past to blackmail them, I suppose. This is a negative type of investigation analysis. Or we could be investigating the cause of suffering, the cause of looking into teachings on karma and so on, analytical meditation. How the self exists, how the I appears. analytical meditation. So these factors can be positive or negative, depending on the situation. Okay, so next week I'll just introduce some of the wholesome factors. There's more teachings on negative factors, negative mental factors. I guess because we've probably got more of them. I don't know, but we'll certainly be looking at them next week. So the analysis of wholesome and unwholesome, they give you these general factors, and then they look more specifically at instances. So the general positive mental factors are attachment, non-attachment, non-hatred, and wisdom. So non-attachment, renunciation. Non-hatred is love, compassion. Wisdom is understanding the nature of reality, the nature of how we exist, how the world exists. So these minds said very deep tendencies. Remember, we have Buddha nature. We have the capacity to become enlightened. The whole point, Buddha was not enlightened at one stage, and he became enlightened. So that's why we have Buddhist teachings, Buddhist practice. We have the path, complete path, which teaches us how to bring ourselves out of suffering and become liberated and fully enlightened. So Geshe-Tarshan says these are like subterranean forces that, because we're not enlightened, they're dormant. They're dormant, and they're like hidden between under these. I guess talks about onion skills of different subtle mind, but to help reveal them, we've got these wonderful practices of compassion, loving kindness, and altruism. So these practices, he says, the best antidotes for self-centeredness, which is one of the main negative mental factors. And so we started those practices in order to be able to reveal these natural potentialities of non-attachment, non-hatred, and wisdom that are there. So that's really the whole point of studying all these different types of minds, is to actually realize that with the potential, we have this potential. Every moment of consciousness is influenced by our actions of body, speech, and mind, virtuous or non-virtuous. But the actual Buddha mind, the nature, our ultimate state of Buddha potential, is clean, clear, and not bound up with the afflictive states. So those mind and its potential, most of the actual teachings in this subject are on the mind. The potential is probably what we're teaching very much of the rest of the course. Loving kindness, compassion, nature of the art, wisdom, and so on. So I thought, just to bring some practice into all this theory, it's good to, a little bit ahead of the time, which is fine, we would do the practice on equanimity, which in this particular practice is called common humanity. I think this is really a good thing for us to be doing at this time with this, the pandemic. As I was reading about this meditation, I thought this is, common humanity seems to be one of the positive outcomes, this realization that we're all together in this samsaric situation. And it seems to be the suffering and the disease and so on, it's actually bringing to mind this commonality we have, that we're all human beings, we're all equally vulnerable to disease, old age, sickness, and death. So in this practice, equanimity is sort of the overall theme, but we're basically focusing very much on how our lives are interconnected with each other. And so we start off with just a little bit about Thupten Jingpa. Thupten Jingpa is the teacher. His book called The Fearless Heart has these wonderful meditations in them. Thupten Jingpa is the Dalai Lama's previous translator, now a scholar and a practitioner of Buddhist psychology. And he's actually in this wonderful book, The Fearless Heart. So he actually starts off the chapter on common humanity. He calls it the just like me meditation, just like me. These beings are just like me. Talking about, he did quite extensive, or maybe he's referring to studies done of Holocaust survivors during Jewish rescuers who actually gave refuge to Jewish refugees during the Holocaust in Denmark and Holland in World War II. And I surveyed them after the war and asked, why did you do this? Why did you risk your life? Rescuing is such a dangerous thing, jeopardizing your own life. And the overwhelming response was just because they're human beings. There's no particular religious reason or doctrinal reason. Just was a natural thing to do. So they didn't question it. So there doesn't seem to be any reason not to. And because they're human beings, they're just like us, human beings. So these perceive, another set of research he did was to look at how charities try to raise funds for their work, particularly helping in third world people who are suffering incredible hardship, starvation, and so on. They said they're much more successful if they actually identify, it's called the identifiable victim effect. So if you can actually show a person to whom the money is going to go, this is Save the Children, I think still uses whether you actually can nominate a particular child who, and you become the sponsor for that child. So this kind of fundraising is far more effective, they said, because the donor can actually identify a human being there. It's not just an anonymous kind of object or cause. So the subjects are more likely to give to identified, in this case it was refugees in Sudan, if they saw photos and names rather than just silhouette. They actually showed them silhouette and then they showed them the photo, and the people who saw the photo much more likely to give. So so this is just interesting background to how our mind works, and be very interesting after this pandemic is over to see if there was the change of people's attitude. I think there's the change of people's attitude just walking around the streets here where I am. People seem to be talking. They ask you how you're doing, and there seem to be more concern for other people at a distance, of course, social distancing. So, just getting back to the meditation, we start off with friend, enemy, and stranger. We look at how we actually tend to classify nearly all our human contacts, people in our lives, as one of these three: friend, loved one. Friend is a generic term. It includes partners, it includes relatives, it includes friends, and it includes pets, children, people, just beings who are important in our lives, who we feel natural closest to. And then enemies who we try to avoid. We have a sort of a natural aversion. We don't want to be near that person. It could be because we've harmed them in some ways, or they've harmed us in some way. So we avoid, and we sort of can actually that negative image can actually increase over time. And then we have the neutral person who we don't have any particular feelings towards because they haven't helped or harmed. So then we actually go back and look a bit more closely at each one and the friend. So that we can experience that incredibly warm feelings. But if there weren't relatives, then they were neutral at one stage. Can we imagine the friends becoming either neutral or enemies? Perhaps we can think of people we've fallen out with over the years who've actually changed. Our minds have changed because they've probably somehow adversely acted towards it, harmed us in some ways. The difficult one, we can think in different ways too. Person is it somebody's loved one? Somebody thinks that person is the most important person in the world, the one that we probably think is the most unimportant and disliked person in the world. We can also sort of remember that they also want happiness and don't want suffering, which is the universal wish for all human beings. And we can also just remember that without the person who makes us uncomfortable, we can't practice patience of any kind. Lama Zopa Rinpoche constantly reminding us of that. The most precious enemy, the one who's most difficult, is our most dearest friend, because they actually are helping us towards liberation. Without the difficult one, there is no chance to practice patience, no compassion, no liberation. So then we look at all the categories, and then we think how probably superficial it is for us to see divide. They're all suffering like us. They all want happiness like us. And then to help that realization, we can just bring to mind how we rely on people. And Tupten Jinpa says, imagine a bowl of rice on the table. Just that bowl of rice, how did it get there? Just briefly acknowledge that we don't grow our own food. We rely on others to grow it. We could be growing that in India in very difficult conditions. There could be great suffering involved, and there could be lives, sentient beings killed, all the insects that have been killed, the harvesting, cultivating and harvesting of the crops, and then the work to bring the rice to the shops, and then the people who sell it to us, and so on. So we can apply that to many things in our lives, the technology, the clothing we wear but don't make. And so that's just part of the later part of the meditation, and then we just realize, just rest on that realization that these people are most important of all in the world. All these people, friend, enemy, stranger. How we are the beneficiaries of all their work and suffering. Okay, so let's do it. Rather than talking about it, we'll just do this practice on common humanity, just like me meditation, it's called. Get comfortable. Okay, so just coming now into the body and mind, bringing our attention inwards, watching the breath for a few moments. So we begin our practice on equanimity, common humanity, and first bringing to mind a friend, enemy and stranger. Starting with the friend, bringing to mind someone who we're very close to, someone we naturally feel that warmth and regard for, allowing that feeling to arise in us, love, concern. Acknowledging that just like us, they want happiness, they don't want suffering. Acknowledging that our attachment to that person could be based on our own needs, what they've done for us. Also acknowledging the impermanence of friendships, and that they can change. There's no inherent friend. It's the way we look at that person. In fact, that friend could be an enemy of another person who sees them in a very different way. Now, moving to a more difficult one, someone who we feel uncomfortable with, just noticing our mind change when we bring that person into our focus. Perhaps someone who's harmed us, unsaid unkind words, done some action that's caused us suffering. Could be somebody who we just don't like and without any reason. Just noticing that feeling, uncomfortable, not wanting to be near that person. Just now reminding ourselves that that person is somebody's loved one. Someone's spouse, friend, parent. Also acknowledge that this person, like us, and like the loved one, wants happiness, doesn't want the slightest suffering, just like us. Also acknowledging that that difficult one will teach us patience. More important than a friend, without patience we can't progress along the path. Okay, and then there's now letting go of that difficult person, bringing the stranger to mind, someone who we have neutral feelings toward, someone we might see but not acknowledge, not have any connection with, work colleague, neighbour, seen but not noticed. Notice the different feelings, perhaps like a feeling compared to the loved one and the enemy. Then acknowledging that just like me, he also wants happiness and not the slightest suffering. The same needs, same wishes. Now we can just put all the three, friend, enemy and stranger, together in front of us, seeing how those categories are quite superficial. Underneath, they are all human beings. They all want happiness. They don't want suffering. They all, of course, they're born into samsara. They all will suffer sickness, old age and death. They have the same hopes and fears as we do as human beings. They deserve to be happy just as we do. They try to make the best of their lives just as we are. Then giving particular attention to the strangers, the vast majority of humanity that we don't actually know, and we're giving some time to acknowledge how much we rely on their kindness, how much we depend on others. Our food we don't grow, but we eat. A bowl of rice on the table comes from the work of others. The food is grown, sometimes under great hardship. Sentient beings die in harvesting the food. Transport the food to our table. Similarly with clothing, we don't make our own clothing, but we wear clothes. Who do we rely on? We rely on sentient beings. Make the clothes often with great hardship, underpaid, exploited, very difficult circumstances. It's virtually no part of our life where we don't rely on others. All the technology in our lives, the computers, the phones, the internet, servicing of our appliances, building of our houses, or the medical attention we're getting from experts, sacrificing their lives, very difficult circumstance to serve others. Just reflecting for a few moments on the deep connection we have with all other beings. The same wishes for happiness. The same experience of suffering that we don't want. You have the opportunity to practice the virtues of patience, compassion, rely on other sentient beings. Without them, we couldn't progress along the path, develop our minds. And then imagining all these sentient beings in human form surrounding us, all the 10 directions, friends, enemies, and strangers, wishing them well. May you, all sentient beings, have happiness. May you be healthy, free from sickness. May you live in peace. May all sentient beings have happiness. May you be healthy. May you live in peace. So finally we can dedicate, and I'll read the dedication that Lama Zopa has given us to do at the end of any practice we do to defeat the virus. So this is Lama Zopa's dedication. It says, due to the merits of the 3 times collected by me, numberless Buddhas, numberless sentient beings, may all wars, all sickness, or famine, or torture, poverty, and economic problems in the world, or dangers of earth, water, fire, and wind, be pacified immediately. May perfect peace and happiness prevail in everyone's hearts and lives. May the Buddha Dharma last for a long time. May sentient beings in this world meet the Buddha Dharma and achieve enlightenment as quickly as possible. Dedicating to that. Well, that's the end of our second live streaming. It's the first one I've done at home. I hope it worked okay. I feel so lucky to be able to do it. How wonderful that this technology is available and that we can use it. Just incredible, really. Again, to the kindness of sentient beings, those who developed this unbelievable technology, putting it to good use. So have a wonderful evening, a wonderful week. And definitely I hope to see you again, or hope you can see me again next week at the same time. So that's the last class in this subject, the 4th class next week. All right, so thank you. Thank you very much. Great to see your numbers. I can see the number of people who are out there. So all the best and stay well. Okay, end stream. I'm going to click the red button now. Take care.